want to get to Abigail. Really want to give her as much time as she can. I've heard a lot about her, and I've read a lot about her in the Buzz, the Iowa Honey Producers Buzz. But just a short introduction for Abigail. So Abigail Kelly is the 2020 Iowa Honey Queen, and she'll be sharing about products of the hive. She'll be focusing on how to render and utilize beeswax. So I hope you came ready to learn about how to make candles, beeswax, based creams, lip balm, and more. So without any more, Abigail, the screen is yours.
Thank you. So I'm going to get my PowerPoint going. I haven't actually used screen share yet. It says the host disabled participant screen sharing. So once we get that going, I can share my screen and have a PowerPoint. But yeah, so I'm the 2020 Iowa Honey Queen. So I do live in Iowa. I live in the Des Moines area. We have, I think, 13 hives right now. And I think they're about ready for winter. We just have to do our winter oxalic acid treatment. I'm not as in the know on all this because I've been doing finals. That is the wrong thing. Let me change that. Yeah, so I've been doing finals for school. So my sisters and my mom have been doing our bee stuff recently. All right, so today like he said, I'm going to share about the products of the hive, mostly beeswax, because that's what I really love. And I feel like a lot of beekeepers don't know very much about beeswax. So I always find that people learn something new when I share about this. A little bit about what I've been up to. So I represent IHPA around the state. At the beginning of the year, I had a lot of in-person presentations all over. One of the highlights was definitely Iowa Honeybee Day in February. And you can see a picture from that on the bottom left corner. I also had a couple radio interviews this year already. I had one in December, I think it was actually the day after Christmas, on the Jeff Angelo show. And then I had a couple on the big show as well. And that was actually during COVID stuff in March. After March, obviously, things changed a lot. I had to figure out Zoom and Facebook and how to do virtual programming, and then how to balance that with in-person programs, and how to do those in-person programs in a way that represents IHPA well, and is safe. So you can see in the top left corner, that's from after I did a Facebook video. I did one called Honeybee Anatomy, which is one of my favorite way to teach kids about honeybee anatomy. So I talk about how they have 6 legs and 5 eyes and 4 wings and 3 body parts, 2 antennas and 2 stomachs, and then 1 stinger and 1 proboscis. In the middle left, I guess, at the top, that's from a virtual program I did using Zoom. I believe that one would have been with the Iowa Library for the Blind, which was that was a very cool program to do. It was really different because I can't rely on, this is so you can see that this is this or whatever. So I had to describe a lot of the sights and the sounds and the textures of what I was doing. And it was kind of unique because it was making a beeswax project and trying to make it in a way that they could still do. In the top middle right, that's from one of the Taste of the Fair events IHPA did down at the fairgrounds. I was there for quite a bit. I'm trying to think how much. I don't remember how many days, but I helped multiple days at that. And that was a way we tried to make up for canceling the state fair. In the top right, that is from a Facebook Live with the Waterloo Public Library. I was talking to a different honey queen the other day, and we were talking about virtual programs and how you don't really build up reimbursement mileage because you don't go anywhere. And we were like, yeah, unless you go up to Waterloo to do a Facebook Live, then you do. And then the bottom picture is from Emma Jakes, who's the FBI Honey Queen and I, and we had a program together in June at Howell's Pumpkin Patch. So I've had lots of things going on. It's been very busy still. Definitely go check out the Iowa Honey Queen program Facebook page. I have a lot of videos on there. If you are looking for recipes to use honey, there are a bunch of cooking with honey videos. And of course, if you want to schedule a program with me, I am more than happy to do so. That's my email and then my home phone number. And then you can always message me through the Iowa Honey Queen program Facebook page. So now I would like to talk about the products of the hive. I'm going to kind of focus a little bit on how you can gift these. So of course we have liquid honey, which is always the perfect gift. I think I've seen so many beekeepers share on their business Facebook page how liquid honey is always great for someone who's really hard to shop for, because who doesn't love honey? So don't overlook liquid honey. But if you want to take it up a notch, creamed honey is a really, really great product that is much easier than you would think. My sisters and my mother and I were always like, we should make creamed honey, but something about it intimidated us, and we didn't do it for a long time. We were like, yeah, we'll do it, but like not yet. And then we bought everything to make it, and we didn't make it. We bought like the starter and everything, and we didn't make it. And then someone else made a batch of creamed honey and was telling us about it. And then they were like, and how did yours go? And we were like, we haven't made it yet. And they were like, you haven't made it? What? And so we're like, okay, we're going to go make it. And so we did. And it was really easy, and it turned out really good. We were a little surprised. So for creamed honey, you need to have liquid honey, and then you need to have 1 thing of creamed honey or your starter. So for our starter, we prefer Salve honey, which you can see up in the upper left-hand corner. We tried Salve honey, and we tried creamed honey that a beekeeper had made. We like Salve better because, number one, it's pretty consistent on what you get. So you know how sometimes like your liquid honey is different? Well, creamed honey does that too. And so for consistency, we like Salve. The Salve turned out better too. We don't really know why, because the creamed honey that we got from the beekeeper was actually better creamed honey. Like we thought it was just better. Like that's what we would buy to eat. But for whatever reason, the Salve worked better. It's also easy to get. You can get it, I think, from Fairways. Our Fairway had it, so you should be able to get it from a local grocery store. So your ratio for creamed honey is 10 parts liquid honey to 1 part creamed honey. You can play around with the ratio. If you have less liquid honey, you can do less liquid honey to creamed honey. If you do less liquid honey to creamed honey, you might get it to crystallize faster. You might not. It kind of depends on all sorts of things, but it's okay to mix up the ratio a little bit. So the first thing you have to do for creamed honey is you need to heat up your liquid honey until all the crystals that are in it dissolve. The reason you do this is because if you don't, your creamed honey is going to cream to that larger crystal size that's naturally found in honey. Obviously for creamed honey, we like the really, really smooth State Fair quality type creamed honey. So you want to get rid of all those large crystals. You do not want to burn your honey, however. So a lot of people we've heard will put their honey in like the oven on a really, really, really low temperature. What we did is we heated up water to boiling, and then we turned it off and let it cool for just a couple minutes. And then we put honey in a pot in the boiling water, like a double boiler, and stirred it until it was evenly heated. And that worked really well, partially because we didn't run the risk of burning it. We've burned honey before. That's not a good thing. Don't do it. So that's one reason we liked it. We also liked it because it's pretty easy. You could just have one person standing there stirring it. And then if you needed to heat it up again, you could just heat up more water and add it. So it worked really well for us. Once it's heated up, you have to let it cool back down, because if it's hot, your creamed honey is going to dissolve too, and then you don't have any starter. So then you let it cool. It takes quite a bit to cool it down. So if you start it, you can heat it up and then forget about it, come back a couple hours up to that-ish, and continue with your creamed honey. So the next step to make the creamed honey is to take out a small amount of your liquid honey. I think we took out, I'm trying to think, we did 10 pounds of honey to 1 pound of creamed honey. So I think we took out 2 or 3 pounds of the liquid honey, and we put it in a small food grade bucket, which is what you can see in the bottom left corner. And then we added all of the creamed honey to that, and then you mix that until it's smooth. And it's really not very hard at all to mix it. You can just use a wooden spoon or a spatula. And then you want to mix it till it's even in color and consistency. So you can see how the honey needs to be in the bottom right corner. It needs to be that even color. And then you take that honey with the creamed honey in it, and you add it to the rest of your liquid honey, and then you mix that until it's smooth and even in color. So this portion is a little harder than this portion because just the way the creamed honey is, you have to break it up really well and get it mixed. But it's really easy. We thought this was the part we thought would be really hard. We actually bought like I don't know what you call it, but it's like an attachment to a power tool, like a drill attachment to mix it, and we didn't even use it because it was really easy. So once you have your creamed honey completely mixed, you're going to measure it out into your jars or your plastic containers, whatever you choose to use. We use jars because that's what we have, but plastic containers, if you're going to do it in like bulk, if you're going to make a lot of it to sell or whatever, you might want to go with plastic because they're cheaper and easier to find during COVID, because in like it must have been August when we were looking for honey jars, it was really hard to find honey jars. It's really hard to find candy jars. So you can do all sorts of different options, and you don't have to worry about your honey crystallizing because it's already crystallized. So we measured out our honey using a scale, and we measured it because we do sell it. And so we wanted it to be very even. If you're not selling it, you really don't have to worry about measuring it. But that's how we did it. And then you want to leave your creamed honey in a cool place for about 2 weeks or until it's fully creamed. So the ideal temperature, and the temperature you want to aim for, is 57 degrees Fahrenheit. A lot of people have a little fridge that has temperature control that they use. We do not have a way to control our temperature like that. So what we did is we put it in a box, and then we put it in our basement. Our basement gets really cold because we have a sliding door that goes outside, and it gets really cold. So we left it down there, and it worked really well for us. It creamed properly. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. If you have the capability to keep it at 57 degrees, definitely do that. But don't be afraid to try to do it without that. If you have a basement that gets cold, what's the worst that's going to happen? It's not going to cream, or it's going to cream wrong, and you have to heat it up to get it back to liquid. It's honey. It's not going to go bad. So I would recommend trying it. If you're a little nervous about that, just try it. And you can make a really small batch if you don't know how it's going to work, and then you don't have to worry too much. But yeah, so until it's creamed, 57 degrees ideally, and then you have creamed honey, and you can try it and see how it turned out and adjust things as you need. On my Queen page, I interviewed Michael Peverall about his creamed honey that won at the state fair. And he said that he always adjusts it just a little bit as he's going. He just learns things as he goes. And we noticed that when we were doing it too. So we started with 2 starters, and we didn't like one. We had to brainstorm how to heat up our honey because we just don't know what to do with that. And we found something that worked for us. And the more you do something, the more you will be able to do it well, which I can definitely share, especially when we get to beeswax stuff, because beeswax is a lot of fun. That bottom link down here is my recipe. I can send that to Tim so that you guys can all have that. That's the recipe we use. It's from some Beekeepers, and it worked really well for us. And again, we adjusted it. So, but that's creamed honey, and it's a great gift. It seems way fancier than it is to some people because they don't know much about honey and beekeeping, but it's a lot of fun. It's my favorite honey. I would recommend trying it. All right, so now switching into beeswax. Beeswax is actually like my all-time favorite product of the hive. We were the beekeepers who were like, when we started, we were the ones who said, we are not going to let our beeswax sit in a bucket. And you can't see it, but right to my left, we have beeswax sitting in buckets. But we do stuff with it. It's just been crazy busy. So the first step to doing something with your beeswax is to render it. And I recommend you render it even if you're not sure what you're going to do with your beeswax. Because rendering your beeswax now, especially if it's new beeswax, will make your life way easier later when you're like, maybe I should do something with this. So there are a couple ways you can render beeswax. You can use a solar wax melter. My sister made one for a 4-H project, and we have used that. I don't like it as much as everyone else in our house because it doesn't clean it to my standards, so I have to go clean it anyways again. But if you just want to really quick get a bunch of it done so that it's not going to cause too many problems later, that's a good way to do it. Another way you can do it is over a double boiler on the stove. I personally will not try this method because I have a lot of younger siblings and beeswax is highly flammable. So the combination of doing something like that on the stove for an extended period of time with all my siblings is not a good idea for me. But if you have the time and if you have the lack of distractions like that, that could be a good method. My favorite method is what I call the crock pot method. So it involves a crock pot. I recommend buying at least a liner to the crock pot, like the inside part that you put food in and stuff. I recommend buying one of those just for beeswax because it's really hard to clean beeswax dishes. So it just makes life for me easier, and it makes life for my mom way easier because I'm not using her food crock pots. I also recommend buying just a cheap one. You can go to the thrift store. We went to the thrift store and Mom bought one, and she came back and she was like, I don't even know if this is going to work. The actual heating source of the crock pot didn't work, but the liner fit in a different crock pot, and it works really well because we don't have to have the separate heating part. Like, it's the inserts what matters because that's where we get the beeswax. So for the actual rendering method, you need to take your liner, and I like to put a plastic crock pot liner inside like the crock pot part of the crock pot because that makes cleanup easier. If you do need to be aware that you're going to go through a lot of them because they rip. They're pretty cheap. They're cheap plastic things. They rip. But for me, it makes it easier enough that I think it's worth it. Once you have your liner in, or if you don't use a liner, you don't need one, you will fill the crock pot about half full with water. When beeswax melts, it floats to the top, and so the water helps make it really easy to get out. And then I put an old t-shirt over the very top of the crock pot. You can see in the middle picture that I have an old t-shirt, and I tie it tight to the handles so that it's tight on top so that when I put my beeswax on, it doesn't sink too much. That helps so that when the beeswax cools, it doesn't cool to your t-shirt because it's sunk. And then you don't have like the remains of t-shirt on your beeswax. Once you have that set up, you can just put your beeswax on top as in the third picture. I typically turn my crock pot on high for 30 minutes, and then I turn it on to low until all the beeswax has melted through. I turn it on high so that it heats the water up really fast, but then I turn it down so that the beeswax doesn't boil. That can ruin the quality of the beeswax, so you want it on low heat. So once the beeswax melts through, you can turn off your crock pot and then let it cool. I typically just let it cool with the t-shirt on, but if you find you have problems with your t-shirt sticking to your beeswax, you can take the t-shirt off and put it on like a piece of parchment so that you don't get beeswax on your counter, and then let it cool. But yeah, and then once it's cool, it's ready to use. It comes out in a really cool disc. You will want to, as you do it, you'll learn how much beeswax to put in, because if you put too much in, it just doesn't work well. And then sometimes like I'll put way too little in, especially with cappings. And then like you have like, you're just scooping out pieces because there's so little beeswax, it didn't stick together in a disc. So that's rendering. That's definitely the method I prefer, but other methods work. But this is what I recommend because I like it. All right, so once you have your beeswax, you can do a lot of things with it, and I'm going to talk about quite a few different things. The first thing I'm going to talk about is molded beeswax candles. I'm not going to share about dipped candles because I didn't know if I'd have enough time, and they're really hard. So if you want to make dipped candles, you go do it, and you become the expert, and you share all your tips with me. They're really, really, really hard to make. But molded beeswax candles are actually really easy. So for all beeswax products, I recommend dedicating containers to the use of the process. Beeswax is really hard to clean. You'll probably hear me say it a lot. It's really hard to clean. We were like, when we first started making candles, we'll use our food glass container and then we'll clean it out and it'll be fine. And then we can go use it for food. No, it's just dedicated to beeswax now. And my mom lost her 4-cup measuring cup. It's fine. Yeah, don't do that. Just dedicate dishes. So we have 2 4-cup measuring cups. We have one for candles and one for like skincare products. And then we have a big soup pot and a little pot. The big soup pot I use, you'll see, for my candles. And then the little pot I use for like my lip balms and stuff. Yeah, but as you do products, you'll find out what you need and what you don't need, and just dedicate the dishes right away so that you don't have to deal with the pain of cleaning them up. If you do want to clean it up though, because there are times when you will want to clean up your dish because you got dirt in it or something, and you don't want that in your beeswax. What you can do is you can heat it up, maybe with just a little bit of beeswax, or you might not even need any. Just heat it up and then take like disposable paper towels and wipe it out. And that gets out all the dirt and cleans up the remaining bits of beeswax, but not enough to use it for anything else. But that keeps things clean so your candles are clean and stuff. So like I said, molded candles are easy. Your molds can be purchased from most beekeeping supply companies. I use the flexible, they're not rubber, but like rubber-like molds. You can also purchase metal molds. But I prefer the flexible ones because they're really easy to use. Let's see. There we go. Molded beeswax candles. So to make them, you will melt your beeswax in a glass container. This is how I make them. In a glass container on the stove. So you can see that over here. I use my big soup pot for this because beeswax is highly flammable. Another thing you're going to hear me say a lot. It's highly flammable, and I don't want it dripping on my stove. So one thing I read when I was trying to research how to do this, is that you shouldn't use a gas stove to make beeswax products because it's too easy to drip it into the flame. Well, our house has a gas stove. And so we're just going to try it, and we're going to take extra precautions. So this is one way we do this. This is pure beeswax. And if that drips on the stove, it's going to light on fire. And so we use the big soup pot so that it can't get there. And then you can see my 4-cup glass measuring cup we stole from my mom. And then we have it all melted down. So you melt it all down. I do like the glass measuring cup because I can tell how much is in there. And I can even see the cups. And so if I was really smart, I would, track it down and then say how many candles it filled. And then I'd be able to give a better guess every time I make it. So you're going to melt it, and while it's melting, I like to prepare my candle molds, which you can see in the bottom left corner. So I have my candle mold, and I have a rubber band or a hair pretty or something wrapped around it because they have a crack in the side so you can get your candle out, and the rubber band keeps it together. And then I like to thread my wick through. I tie my wick to a chopstick. You could use a pencil. Some people use bobby pins, just whatever, long and thin. And then I lay my chopstick on cups. I use napkins. Those are fabric napkins to get the right height for my candles. Some people use mold spray release or spray mold release or candle release. We actually have some and we do use it, but sometimes we forget. And the fun thing about us forgetting is we found out it doesn't really make that much of a difference for us. So you don't have to go out and purchase that necessarily. If you have problems with your candles coming out, you could always try it. So once your beeswax is melted, you pour it into your mold. I like to leave about 1/2 inch at the top, and then I'll swirl my wax in the mold, and that allows the air bubbles to move and hopefully float to the top. And then I fill my mold all the way. I let it cool until the top is warm, but still soft. And then I'll cut my wick and I'll press it into the mold, and this will help keep that bottom flat. And then I let it dry more. I let it cool. I like to let them cool for as long as possible. Oftentimes I'll leave them, like I'll start them in the morning and I'll leave them until like 8 o'clock at night. So if I start them at like 10, I might leave them all day. You could do up to probably 2 candles a day, depending on the size of the mold, but we've damaged too many candles trying to pull them out too early. So we just like to let it wait. And then they come out and you trim your wick on the top. You only need about 1/8 of an inch, but I like to leave it longer so that customers know I didn't make a mistake. Because if you see a really tiny wick, you might think that doesn't look right, but it really doesn't need to be very long. My number one tip for beeswax candles is the best way to store them is in a plastic bag, like not a gift bag, but like if you've ever gotten like holiday Christmas treats in like a bag and like tied at the top, like that type of bag. Beeswax loves attracting dirt, and so putting them in that bag keeps you from having to clean them later. All right, my next thing is Plantain Salve, and I'm going to talk about steeping a little bit. But first, plantain is a leafy plant that has many health benefits, including the healing property when applied to bee stings. So plantain is this green leafy plant up here. If you don't keep your yard pristine, you probably have this in your yard. And it does really help with bee stings. My mentors taught this to us when we first, actually it was before we started keeping bees. They taught it when they put the bees on our property. To make plantain salve, you have to steep the plantain leaves in coconut oil or another carrier oil. I use coconut oil because it has a lot of health benefits. We cook with it, so we have it in our house anyways. So the way to steep is you have to harvest your leaves. You try to pick healthy leaves. So this picture, actually, I wouldn't pick very many of these leaves. They have holes in them. The crinkly edges don't look right. You want nice whole leaves. If you wait a long time to mow your lawn, right before you mow your lawn is when you want to go look for plantain leaves. Once you pick your leaves, you want to pick a lot because they shrink when they dry. I like to lay them flat on my table, usually on a towel. And then I put my leaves out, and then I usually put a towel over the leaves and let them dry. They don't take too long to dry, but if you can find an out of the way place, that's best. Once they're completely dry, they have to be completely dry, you put them in oil. So I use coconut oil. There are other oils you can use, but you need to make sure it's a suitable oil. So in the middle, you can see it's actually dandelion heads being steeped. I don't have a good picture of plantain being steeped, so I'm using this one. But you fill the jar as full as you can, and then you pour the oil on top. And then you can just leave it in your cabinet for months. I like to steep my plantain for months. So typically I pick it in the summer and then I make it in the winter. So as long as you can wait is what I recommend. If you want to make your plantain salve or whatever you're steeping faster, you can use a crock pot to speed up the steeping process. So just a thought if you want to do that. Again, research it. I haven't done that because I'm never in a rush to make this type of stuff. Usually I pick it and I'm like, I don't want to make this. I just pick so much and then I just let it sit. But once it's steeped, then you have to remove the leaves from the oil. So in the third picture, you can see how I remove the leaves, or in this case, the dandelion heads. So I like to dump my oil and whatever's in it into a measuring cup with a spout. And then I have an old t-shirt over a jar. And I have it tied actually with one of those rubber bracelets, but you can use rubber bands. And then I pour the oil into the jar so that all of the leaves come out, and then you have your oil. So on the left is my oil, my plantain oil. The way to know if it's done is you want to see that color change. So this stuff is green. I don't know if you can tell in the dandelion picture, but that stuff is yellow. And so typically it will take on the color of whatever you steep. And so that green is really good. I know that that's been steeped, that has the nutrients, that has the health benefits. So my recipe for plantain salve is 4 ounces of plantain infused coconut oil and then ½ an ounce of beeswax. This is a recipe that's really easy to play around with. If you find that the salve is too thin for you, it melts too easy or whatever, you can add more beeswax. If you think it's too thick, you can add more oil. It's just a really flexible recipe. It's literally 2 ingredients. So I like to put my ingredients in a glass container. I would recommend dedicating a container to plantain salve because it does have a bit of a smell, and you might not want that in anything else. And then heat it up in a pot of water on the stove. Once you have it melted all together, you can put it in a jar or a plastic container. We use jars. And then you can give it away. You can sell it. You can keep it handy when you get stung in the bee yard. It's going to happen. I do recommend getting it on as fast as you can. I found it's way more effective for me if I put it on immediately after I get stung than when I don't. If I wait till after I'm done, it might be too late to really be overly effective. It does help with itching, which is really great. This salve also makes a great gift for parents with young children because it's really good for bug bites, cuts and scrapes. Your beeswax overall is just really good for your skin, and then coconut oil is really good for your skin, and plantain is really good for your skin. So it's really, really good for you. My next thing is what we call Mom's favorite body cream. So the story behind this cream is Emma Jakes, the FBI Honey Queen, made it at one of Carly Ray's. If you know Carly, she was the 2017 Iowa Honey Queen. She had a Queen Day, and Emma demonstrated how to make this, and they sent a jar home with everyone. And my brother, who was, let's see, 2017, so you've been like 2 or 3 at the time, had some really dry skin that wasn't a result of anything that the doctors could tell. They had tried over-the-counter stuff, and it just didn't work. So my mom was like, we're going to try this because it's something we have on hand. No one's really using it because we forget about it. So we tried it, and it worked really well on my brother's skin. And so he actually still uses it on his hands. They're really dry all the time. And so before bed, he's 5. So he gets out his jar, and he rubs it all over his hands. Like, they're super oily. He puts on gloves, and then he goes to bed, and the next day they look way better. So we call it Mom's favorite body cream because Mom loves it. And then we call it body cream because you can use it on not just your hands. It's really moisturizing, really healing. It's great. My recipe is 1 cup sweet almond oil. I use sweet almond oil. The recipe said you can also use olive oil if you would like, but sweet almond oil is something we already have on hand, and olive oil is really, really, really expensive. You also use ½ a cup of coconut oil, 2 ounces of beeswax by weight, which is about 1/4 cup, ½ a teaspoon of vitamin E oil, which is optional. We don't use that at all. 15 to 20 drops essential oil, which is also optional. On the essential oils, we have 3 different types of this cream. We make normal cream, which just has almond oil, coconut oil, and beeswax. And then we make one with lavender. And then we actually make one with dandelion infused coconut oil. And that's because dandelion also has a lot of great health benefits. It's not just good for our bees, obviously, in early spring, but it also has health benefits. So we make that too. The dandelion one's not very popular amongst anyone because it also kind of smells. I don't know what it is about stuff that grows outside, but it smells a little bit. But lavender, people love lavender because it smells really nice. So definitely essential oils are a really good option in this case. So to actually make it, you're going to melt the sweet almond oil and the coconut oil and the beeswax in a glass container in a pot of water on the stove. You can do this one. You can really do any of these, except I would not recommend doing the candles in the microwave. But any of these creams you can do in the microwave. I just like it on the stove better just because it's the stove. It feels, I don't know, more real. It takes longer, but I like it so much better. Once those are melted together, you're going to turn off your stove. You're going to take it off the heat, and you can add your vitamin E oil or essential oils if you choose to. Once that's all combined completely, you can pour it into your glass or plastic containers and allow it to cool. And then once it's cooled, it looks like this bottom picture. The top picture is what it looks like when you pour it in right before it starts to cool. One thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning is that we, of course, know we have two types of beeswax. We have our honey cappings and our burr comb. And the burr comb you should only use for non-skincare products. And then the cappings you should reserve only for skincare products. So this one and the Salve before would be cappings, and then the candles I would use burr comb. Just note, of course, we know why, because we know what goes into our hives that we don't want on our skin, all that treatment from the varroa mites and from other diseases. We don't want that in our skincare products. It's always kind of a struggle when I'm telling other people, non-beekeepers, about how to make these, because I'm like, I don't want to say it's dirty, because it's not dirty. It's just don't use it on your skin. But I also don't want to make the beekeepers sound like terrible people, like we're giving our hives chemicals that we don't want anywhere near us. No, it's fine. But yeah, so cappings for skincare, burr comb for candles. My all-time favorite, this is my favorite, and this is a lot of people's favorite, is Beeswax Lip Balm. If you have never used Beeswax Lip Balm, you are missing out, because it is the best. It is the best. It's a great alternative to petroleum jelly-based lip balms. So I always say that petroleum jelly is like plastic. When it's on your skin, it's going to keep all your moisture in, but it's not going to let your skin breathe. So it's actually going to dry out your skin. Beeswax is really not that way at all. It keeps all your moisture in, but it also sucks moisture out of the air into your skin, which helps you stay moisturized all day long. I always encourage people to use this over like chapstick and other petroleum-based lip balms, because it's so much better, and I promise it really is. I love lip balm. So this recipe is super easy. It's 1 tablespoon beeswax, 1 tablespoon sweet almond oil, 1 tablespoon shea butter, and ½ a teaspoon flavor oil. Your flavor oil can be food grade essential oils, or it can be what I use, which is food grade candy flavoring. I like candy flavoring because it's cheap. It comes in quite a few more flavors than like essential oils. And then we're just never been big essential oil people. We just aren't. But if you like essential oils, like, they are really nice. I've seen some lip balms made with them, and they're really nice too. Candy oils, the trick to them is if they're not oil-based, which many of them aren't actually oil-based, you have to hold them in your palm until they get warm. So while you're melting all your ingredients, I like to hold it and it keeps warm, and then when I add it, it stirs in nicely. Otherwise, the flavoring tends to bunch up and not mix in well. So for this recipe, you melt everything but the flavoring in a glass container in a pot of water on the stove. This one and the Mom's Favorite body cream, I do use the same containers with, because they're basically like, they're pretty much the same thing. They're not quite, like, the proportions are different, but they're very, very similar. And so I'm not contaminating like Plantain Salve with my lip balm, which would be, I think, very nasty. Once you melt your ingredients together, you take it off the heat and you add your flavoring. Then you stir it in until it's combined. The nice thing about the colored candy flavorings is you can tell when it's combined. I use peppermint, which is clear, and you can't always tell, but peppermint's so strong, you know if it's combined. Once it's combined, you're going to pour it in your lip balm tubes or your cosmetic jars. So the difference between those two is your tubes are what you see on the left side of the top picture. And then your cosmetic jars are the clear plastic circular things. Lip balm tubes are preferred by basically everyone, so that's what I recommend using. I like the cosmetic jars for when I go give programs, because it's hard to talk and pour at the same time. And it's hard to talk and pour into a tiny opening at the same time. And so when I use the cosmetic jars, I can focus a little less on pouring and more on continuing the conversation with the attendants. One neat thing about the top picture is I made myself a lip balm tube holder. So I just found a spare piece of wood and I drilled in holes the size of lip balm tubes. You can also purchase a lip balm tube holder, or you can take your tubes, bunch them up, and tie a rubber band around them, and that keeps them standing up and it keeps them easy to pour. So once you have your lip balm in your containers, you're going to let it cool for roughly an hour to start. And then you can clean the outsides of the containers with a dry cloth and then put a lid on. And then you want to let them sit for a couple more hours to overnight. If you do not let them sit, they're going to become granular and just not smooth. And so as you can see in the right picture, the left picture, I guess, it is very smooth on the outside. You can tell it's a very well-rounded top. I'm going to assume that it's that way all the way through. And that's what you want. If you don't let it cool, it just gets chunky, and it's not good in lip balm. And then you can sell it, you can give it away. If you do a lot of vendor fairs or farmers markets, this would be something to consider adding to your table. It's very inexpensive to make, and then it's inexpensively priced because it's a tube of lip balm. And so people like if they're just kind of casually shopping and they see something inexpensive and that they use a lot, they might be more likely to purchase that. We have really good success when we sell lip balm. People really like it. Fun fact, the most popular flavors are peppermint around Christmas and then strawberry all year round. Everyone loves strawberry. So my next, and I think this is the last one, product is reusable food wraps. I've only made these once, and these are very, very challenging. So if you feel like you make candles and they're beautiful and perfect, and then you go make all sorts of creams and stuff, this is the next big challenge, and something I still need to work on, but I have some insight into this. So I researched this, and there seem to be two main ways people make them. They make them by just putting everything on top of the cloth, and I call it cooking it in the oven. And then they make it by melting the ingredients and then painting them on the cloth and then cooking them in the oven. So I started with just doing the putting everything on top. And that was interesting. So you take some beeswax and you take some resin and you take some jojoba oil and you put it on a piece of, I believe, cotton. I'm pretty sure it's cotton because this is the same stuff my mom makes masks out of. So you can take the cotton and you cut it out in your shape. This is the shape of one of our bowls we have in our house. And then you put it on and you cook it in the oven on low. Please note you should put parchment paper down underneath your cloth so you don't ruin your pan. And you cook it on low heat. So I think I put my oven on low. And I think it was I think we figured out it's like 175 degrees. So you want it as low as you can get it because beeswax is flammable and you don't want to light your oven on fire. And then you want to check it regularly and spread out the mixture. This method I did not like. The reason I didn't like it is, I'm going to skip a couple slides. You can see here on this cloth that there's the yellow bee cloth on the top, that you can see the resin on it still. And that resin was peeling off and it was just not good. And you can kind of see that on this big one here too. And so I recommend not using that method. I think it doesn't turn out very well. The alternative method I recommend is that method where you melt it down. So this one, I definitely think you should dedicate a container to again as well. I think just the combination of the beeswax and the resin made it really, really hard to clean. So dedicate a glass jar to it. Glass jars aren't expensive, and I'm sure you have some laying around. So then you melt 1 cup of beeswax, half a cup of pine resin, which is also known as rosin, and 2 tablespoons of jojoba oil. You melt that in a pot of water on the stove. Once that's melted, you paint it on your fabric, and you really want to put a lot on it. The fabric will soak it up. So you want a lot on there, and then you put it in your oven on low and you cook it. About every 5 minutes, you'll check it and spread out the mixture. You don't necessarily add more unless you need more. What it kind of does is the cloth absorbs it, but then it kind of pools. So that mixture will pool around the cloth, and you'll just take a paintbrush and spread it out to areas that it doesn't have. Typically, the edges need more mixture. I am using like a tiny little watercolor paintbrush in the picture. Don't do that. Go buy a larger, soft bristled paintbrush. It doesn't have to be anything super nice because you're going to ruin the paintbrush and you're never going to use it for anything else. But you want something bigger that's not going to take you 5 minutes to spread it out. Once you have your food wrap cooked to perfection, no, cooked to golden brown. No, don't cook it to golden brown. Once it's spread out completely and you feel like it's been evenly distributed, you'll allow the wrap to cool. And then you will test it and see how it turned out. So the food wraps are supposed to just press onto the bowl or even onto themselves. The wraps I made worked fine on the bowls. So the two middle wraps, the green bee wrap and the multicolored hexagon one, they pressed on really well the bowls. The yellow one pressed pretty well, but I didn't like it because of the resin again. And then the daisy one was my last one I made, and I was running out of mixture, so it didn't work as well. So just make sure you have lots of mixture. The recipe looks like you're using a ton of, like it feels like you're using a lot, and like it just feels like a lot, but it's really not very much. So underestimate how much you're going to be able to cover, because it's better to always be like, oh, I need more cloth, than to run out and not do it well. So it can be pressed on themselves, and they do when they work right, but something about the way I made them, they didn't want to press onto themselves, but they worked really well on bowls. It's very important to care for these properly. So they should be washed with cold water and an alcohol-free soap, and then they should be immediately dried. If they lose their stickiness, they can be put on a piece of parchment and cooked in the oven for a short period of time, and then you can spread out the mixture again. Or you can put it between two pieces of parchment paper and use an iron on it. There is a company that makes bee wraps, and they have all the current information on their website. It is the best. So definitely check them out. I forget what they're named, but I'm sure if you Google them, you can find them. One thing to note is you should not use anything acidic with the wraps, because that will cause the wrap to decay. It will cause the mixture to get destroyed. Another thing is I found when I was pinching it on my bowl that I had to pinch it on both sides. So you can see that here on the green, like there's a divot in the middle, like it's a great big divot in the middle. So when you're filling your bowls, if you plan on covering it with a wrap, you have to use only, like you can't fill all the way to the top. So this was actually really fun to make. I hope to try them again. Life got busy right after I made them, so I didn't get a chance to try them again. And we ran out of rosin because we didn't know it was going to use so much. But it was really fun to make. I think they're really, really neat in concept. I'm the person who's like, I don't like using plastic wrap because, you know, the bees work so hard and then we use plastic and it's a waste and it goes in a circle. But they're really cool. If you want to challenge yourself, I definitely recommend it. So kind of as a wrap up, we had candles, the molded candles. Always dedicate your dishes. Remember, you're working with something flammable. The candles are really easy to make. When you make them, enter them in the Iowa State Fair. And then you have skincare products that you make out of cappings. And you have Plantain Salve, which is a great way to get into steeping, which can lead to steeping other things for other products. Mom's favorite body cream, lip balm, and reusable food wraps. Are there any questions? I'm gonna check the chat because I saw things popping up and I think that is the wrong button. There we go. Do you put a lid on the jar? When was that referring to? Was that steeping?
So Abigail, that was my question. Is that that was when you were like infusing the oil with either dandelions like you had or plantain? Like you just had it and you said just put it in the cabinet. Do you put a lid on it or you leave it open?
Yes, put a lid on it. Sorry. Yes, put a lid on it. So I use a jar most of the time. One of the reasons it's good to use a glass jar is you can heat up the oil and everything, because our house gets a little chilly in the winter, so the coconut oil tends to solidify. So that's one reason I use a glass jar, but I actually do have giant coconut oil plastic containers, and right now I have plantain steeped in coconut oil in those. But yes, cover your plantain, Salve. Otherwise, I mean, maybe everyone's a little cleaner than I am, but you'll probably get dirt in it otherwise. And then, do you use certain types of wicks for making candles? That's a great question. And as I was practicing, I was like, I need to go over wicks, and then I forgot. So yes, you do need a certain type of wicks. We bought a lot of our molds from Man Lake, and on the page where you can look at the candle mold, it tells you what size wick you need. And that's like really, really great. So make sure you peruse the page with the candle mold on it and find out the wick you need. If you have the wrong size wick, your candle will do something called welling. And when it melts, the outside layer of the wax will not melt. And you'll just have like a well in the middle of your candle. So thankfully, I think most of our candle molds use the exact same size wick. So there are only so many, but yes, double check, find out what wick you need. Any other questions? All right, thank you so much for having me. Again, I'm gonna put my contact information. So someone asked me if I add coconut oil to your wax. So we do not, we just do 100% beeswax candles. We have seen people do that. I don't know what that adds to the candle except diluting your wax so that it's cheaper for you, but coconut oil is not really that cheap. So I think straight beeswax is really great. You can put 100% beeswax on it. You can tell people about how beeswax is made and why it makes such a good candle. So I just keep it pure.
Yeah, and Abigail, again, that was my question. I just saw some videos where they said adding coconut oil makes the candle burn a little slower, but that's kind of the only thing that they said about that.
It might, but one of the things about beeswax is it's slower burning than paraffin or soy, and so like you're just making it even slower. So we have burned candles. We're not candle burning people. Again, lots of distractions. Fire in our house belongs outdoors in the fire pit. But our candles have lasted a long time. We make birthday candles, so they're like the number candles you buy at the store, but out of beeswax. And those burn really, really, really slow. And so we've actually been able to reuse them because you lose so little, especially when it's on a birthday cake and you blow it out in like however long it takes to sing happy birthday.
Yep.
So we haven't had a problem with that.
Okay. And when you're making your candles, do you ever have them? So I made a couple of candles. It's probably hard to see, but you can see that they cracked, or they kind of. You ever have that? Or
we haven't had our candles crack, but I believe one of the reasons it might crack is air bubbles could be a cause for that. Probably not in that size, but if they cool too rapidly, they might crack, especially in a container where the beeswax feels like it has to fill the container, and so it causes cracks. So a way to prevent fast cooling would be to wrap your container in like a towel, like some sort of insulator that will allow it to cool down slower.
Oh, okay, that probably would help. I think you're right on that one. Does anybody else have any questions? I mentioned to Abigail. I know it's with Zoom, it's just it's hard to like kind of butt in and ask a question. But does anybody else have any questions?
I got one here for Abigail.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 2020 queen. What are they doing for the 2021 queen? Are you staying on, or everybody would kind of like to maybe know a little bit?
That's a good question. Yeah, so I have been offered a year extension, which I of course I accepted it. So I will be the 2021 honey queen. I'm not really sure, like, I don't know. It's weird because I'm like, yes, I'm the, but like I have, like, they give me brochures, right? And it says 2020, and I'm like, well, there's no point in buying more because I haven't been able to give away very many. So I will be the 2021 honey queen, and I'm pretty excited. Hopefully things will get back to normal-ish. Otherwise, I'll just plan on keep doing virtual programs and trying to reach people through that.
Yeah, great. Abigail, do you ever?
I have a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Madison.
I'll try to talk out. What are you studying in school, and where are you going to school?
So I am going to Faith Baptist Bible College in Ankeny. So it's like 30 minutes from home. So I live at home and commute. And I'm studying elementary education. So I'm a freshman, just finished finals, which is really, 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 really exciting. But I'm really excited to do elementary education. I love teaching and education. I've been able to visit schools and like, just, I don't know, it's really cool to talk to the kids about bees. So I'm excited.
You do a great job.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? All right. And Abigail, people can always send questions to your email. Is that correct?
Yes. To the email, you can call me. I'm not home very much because, well, I guess I'll be home more now. But yeah, you can call my mom. We'll talk to you all day. Facebook, definitely go check out Facebook. The Facebook page is awesome. We have lots of videos. I try to keep the page updated on when I have programs. And since things are virtual, there's almost always, you know, easy way to stop in on one of my programs.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Abigail. Thank you for your time, and really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you on some other events then, because like I said, I've read a lot about just some of the things you've done in the Iowa Honey Producers, the Buzz, the newsletter. So I've just always thought your kid events and things like that were really, really cool. You've given us a lot of ideas. So thank you again. We're gonna do our door prize drawing, and then also Peter Juleseth, I've got your quilt. So if you can stick around after we do our drawing, then we'll be in touch. But so Madison has got a way to do. We're gonna raffle off our door prize of the stained glass. So Madison entered in everybody's names and put them on a giant wheel. So
can you see it?
Yep, we can
Perfect.
see it.
All right, here we go.
All right.
Oh no. Oh.
So
Look
Dan
at that.
Kirchman. All right, Dan. So yes, congratulations on winning the stained glass, and you can email us, and so Madison, you've got our email. It's North Iowa Beekeepers Club at gmail.com. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, excellent.
I know this person. I can get a hold of them.
Perfect. All right. Well then, yes, I will have that. Our next meeting will be January 12th, and as I mentioned, with just everything going on, we've just kind of been just doing our meetings kind of month to month, so we don't have anybody picked for our speaker for next month. If anybody has any ideas, or Abigail, if you have anybody you can recommend, if you can get in contact with me, that'd be great. I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. One thing I wanted to talk about really quick before I forget is also, so Abigail mentioned treating honeybees for mites between kind of like now Christmas and December and January treating for mites using oxalic acid. And then Abigail, can I ask, when do you have a certain time frame that you like to do that?
So we do it a little different. We do an oxalic acid drip, and because of that, we try to aim around Thanksgiving. We haven't done ours yet because we're behind this year. But yeah, Thanksgiving to the new year to January, just try to get it in.
Yeah. And so you use the drip. So what's your temperature that you're shooting for?
I think we try to shoot for like 37 to 47 degrees. So Thanksgiving's not always possible because sometimes we have gorgeous 60-degree Thanksgivings.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, and that's an option, is using, it's called the dribble method, or using a vaporizer where you've got a pan and you heat that up, and that vapor, kind of this time is perfect because you might have no brood, and that oxalic acid could be almost 100% effective. So if anybody has any questions about that, you can say something on our Facebook page. Send us something on Messenger, or ask us via email, and we can get you some more information. But all right, everybody, thank you so much for joining, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Yes.